If you're jumping straight from walking into the gym to loading plates on the bar, you're making a critical systems error that is robbing you of strength and inviting injury. Most lifters think warming up is about getting loose or breaking a sweat, but your body operates like a complex system, and trying to run high-performance tasks before properly initializing is a recipe for malfunction. Today, we're exposing why most warm-ups are either too long, too short, or completely missing the point. You'll discover the engineering principle that explains what happens when you start lifting cold, how to design a boot sequence that primes your nervous system for peak performance, and why the difference between muscle soreness and actual pain could save your training career. Welcome to Wit and Weights, the show that helps you build a strong, healthy physique using evidence, engineering, and efficiency. I'm your host, certified nutrition coach Philip Pape, and today we're tackling something that happens before you even touch your first working set in the gym, but might be the most critical part of your entire training session. Now, most lifters approach warming up like it is a mystical ritual involving foam rollers, resistance bands, dynamic stretching, enough to choreograph a dance routine. And trust me, I've been there. I used to do CrossFit. Others treat it like an annoying speed bump between walking into the gym and getting to the real work. Let's just get this over with. But I think both approaches are flawed because they misunderstand the purpose of the warm-up and what it needs to accomplish, which is what we're talking about today. The truth is that your body, like we talk about all the time on the show, is a sophisticated system. I've learned from hard knocks, my own injuries and surgeries, and other bumps and bruises along the way, that it requires purpose and intentionality. And if we're to use an analogy of a computer, you need to initialize your operating system so that you can operate at peak performance. And if you skip the sequence or if you execute it in the wrong way, you're not just missing out on the gains, the reason that you're in the gym, but you're actually potentially holding your back and making it harder on your physiology, on your recovery. Now, before we get into the specifics of building up your warm-up routine, I do want to share something that can help you systematize this and be very intentional about how you do it. Wits and Weights Physique University gives you those frameworks. We have a course called Lifting Lessons in our Training Templates course, and it gives you chunks of practical recommendations on every one of these, and it demos how to do different things, how to warm up, what to have in your gym bag, how to use a power rack, how to lift safely, etc. And that's how I've structured it, because I've learned from personal experience, from coaching people, from training, what really works for these different things and how people get stuck when they want to go and start lifting weights. So if you're totally new to lifting, or if you've been lifting but you're not confident enough with some of these things, we can definitely help you there. And we are relaunching at a much lower tier. It's $27 a month. Used to be $87 a month. And if you join using my link in the show notes, I'm going to build you a custom nutrition plan at no extra cost. It is a combination of nutrition, training, and lifestyle in there. A lot of great courses, no pressure, a good community, and it's going to help you get where you want to go. All right, let's talk about warming up and understanding what we're actually trying to solve here. In systems engineering, we have something called the cold start problem. When you power on a computer from a completely shut down state, it's cold, right? It doesn't immediately operate at its full capability. You've probably seen this with your own computer at home. If it's been off and you turn it up, it takes a while to kind of crunch on, not everything is ready to go. There's just this lag there, right? The system has to load the operating system. It has to initialize drivers, allocate memory, synchronize all the components. And if you try to just jump into like your video editor or some high performance application before it completes, it might crash, you might get an error, it might just really slow down until it's ready to go. Granted, newer computers get better and better at handling all of this stuff. But if we think of your body as working the same way, I think it's a good analogy for this process from the time you walk into the gym to the time you lift. So when you walk into the gym, especially guys and girls, ladies who've been sitting at a desk all day, raise your hand, okay? Or you just rolled out of bed, because I train early in the morning. I do try to take some time to eat and read and kind of wake up mentally before I go to the gym, but not all of you have that luxury, and some of you just jump right into it. Your musculoskeletal system and your nervous system, it's like they're powered down. It's like they have to have a cold start, right? Your muscles are at a very low temperature. Your joints don't have the synovial fluid circulating yet. Your nervous system isn't yet primed for rapid force production, the kind of power that we put into place when we lift weights. And your motor patterns are a little bit sluggish, they're a little bit dormant. And so if you load heavy weight onto this unprepared system, it again is like the analogy I just said, trying to launch a really demanding program on a computer that is still like trying to start up. You're asking for poor performance at best and a crash at worst. And I like this analogy. I nerd out on this stuff. If you don't, just bear with me. So where most people screw it up, I'll say, is they either skip the warm up entirely. And I know some of you starting strength guys, you're like, oh, I'll just jump right into the lift and warm up with the lift. Okay, I get it. And that might be part of the solution. And there's still a way to warm up properly doing it that way. But that's one approach. Other extreme is I'm going to spend 20 or 30 minutes of my workout doing all the warm-ups. And this week I'm going to add in mobility, and then I'm going to add in breathing, and I'm going to add in dynamic stretching, right? And it's like, I have to do all this stuff. And there's a nice happy medium, right? We don't need to do all of this, and we also don't need to skip everything. The fundamental principle here is that your warm-up should be targeted for you based on your needs and recoverability. And so I'm going to give you some options today. Think of it as having 3 distinct phases, and think about the phases that you need and how long they need to be. Some of these phases may be minimal to non-existent, and others may be the most helpful thing that you personally need in the gym. So phase 1 is the system power on. If we're going to use the computer analogy, this is the general warm-up. And if you're like me, who lives in the Northeast, I train over my garage where it's like 50 degrees in the winter. It is cold. I'm cold. My muscles are cold. And this is like 3 to 5 minutes at most of some sort of low intensity movement. Maybe you have a rower. Maybe you have an assault bike like I do. Maybe you have just walk around the gym. I don't want you to be running or sprinting at this point. Just keep it easy, light, and warm yourself up. Just move. The goal isn't to break a sweat or to exhaust yourself. You're just increasing your core body temperature. You're getting your joints lubed up with a synovial fluid. And if you're already warm, or if it's a warm day, or you've been sweating, then you could skip this. You could skip it. I mean, honestly, if it's 4 p.m., you've been working all day, you've been moving around, it's a pleasant day. You probably don't even need to warm up, increase your body temperature. That's it. So don't do the dynamic stretches or any of that stuff, or, you don't have to do jump ropes. You don't have to do leg skips, any of that. You don't have to. I mean, you could, obviously, but I'm not going to waste my power, my muscles, or any of that on the warm up. I'm going to keep that for the lifting. So that's phase 1. Phase 2 is like the hardware check, right? So now you've warmed up. Now you got to make sure things are operating right. This is where you prep your movement. You do maybe some targeted stuff if needed. And what I mean by that is maybe some stretching or mobility work if you have, for example, limitation. Most people, especially the younger you are, and if you don't have a history of any issues, you don't need any stretching at all. And some might argue that too much stretching could be a negative when you get under the bar, right? Because you kind of have almost an over flexibility versus the kind of strong, slight springiness, stiffness, if you will. But what you're looking for here is whether everything is moving and feeling good, right? Can you get into that squat position? Can you reach overhead? Is your low back feeling good, right? Nothing feels like it's going to spring out of place. For those of us with a history of shoulder injuries or knee issues or whatever, do you need to throw on your compression sleeves at this point? Do you need to do stretches under the bar, right? If you're squatting, this is a really good one. It might mean grabbing the bar in the rack and just getting under and stretching into that squat position to warm up your shoulders, your thoracic rotation, just kind of making sure you've got that range of motion. Some wall slides, if you're talking about overhead pressing and your shoulders are very stiff. I can go on and on about shoulder stretching myself with bands and stuff. But again, you may not even need this. It's not about activation drills or elaborate movement sequences or pre-exercise or anything like that. It's just, is your hardware functioning for the patterns that you are now going to load? That's all it is. But I wanted to mention it because it's an important piece that I do think some people dismiss it as like, nobody has to do that. No, some people do have to do that. And I'm acknowledging that for you, but it doesn't have to be a crazy amount, just a little bit of stretching for a few minutes per your needs. And then the final phase, and this is the non-negotiable part. So again, phases 1 and 2 may be partly optional or totally optional for you. The final phase is I'll say application-specific loading. So if we're going to take the computer analogy, but that term applies to our body. This is where you perform the movement that you're going to train. That's it. You perform the movement you're going to train, and you start light, and you gradually increase the load until you reach your working weight. And you do that by starting with a higher number of reps at a very light weight, and then jumping up in reasonable increments, higher weights, lower reps, taking a little bit of rest, but not too much, all the way until you're ready for the working sets. And so what does that look like in practice? Let's say, let's go with a big weight. Let's just to give you the full Monty here. You're going to deadlift 405, and that's your working set, okay? And maybe it's singles or doubles or triples, doesn't matter, whatever. You're 405. So you're going to have a ramp up. It's going to look something like this. You might start with the empty barbell. Now, granted, somebody lifting 405 may not start with the empty barbell. It's probably going to jump right to 135. But hey, it doesn't hurt. In fact, you can consider that part of phase 2. That's like stretching into the movement, right? Start with the empty barbell, see how everything feels with your back, with your hip hinging, your knees, make sure the form is good. Nothing wrong with doing that. It's going to take an extra minute or two. So you might start with the empty barbell for 5 or 10 reps, do it once or twice. Then you're going to take, enough time to load 45s on the plate to warm up for 135. And you might do that for 5 or 8, right? I know Starting Strength has a model where it's like 5, 5, 3, 2, 1, but that's because they're going for 5s. For you, you might want to go with more reps at the lower weight and then, go 8, 5, 3, 2, 1, for example. Just an idea. So you're deadlifting 135 for 8. Okay. Add 2 more 45s, 225 for 5. Add 2 more 45s, 315 for 3. You notice I'm jumping it's not tiny jumps. It's reasonable jumps to kind of split the whole thing from empty bar to working weight into like 5 or 6 segments, right? So 315 for 3. Then you add, maybe at that point you add the 25s and you do 365 for a double. And then you could jump to 405 right from there. Some people want to have a little extra single snuck in there. So you might jump to 385 for a single and then you're 405, right? It's a little bit of an art, a little bit of a science. The point is you got to feel good. You have to feel warmed up. And so this allows you to gauge your movement readiness as you get to that point, which also helps you understand whether the weight's going to feel good, how you're going to perform, right? It gives you a lot of aspects of self-regulation that people miss when they don't warm up properly or intentionally. So notice what's happening here, right? You're not just getting warm, because that will warm you up, by the way. Like that alone will warm most people up. You're rehearsing the movement pattern. You're teaching your nervous system to coordinate all of the muscles involved, and you're gradually loading the tissues to prepare them for heavier weight. You're recruiting more and more muscle fibers. You're just gradually kind of massaging out that muscle system, if you will. And so each ramp up set is both a warm up and a practice session, a skill development session. And so you treat them seriously. You don't just rush through each warm up set. You're thinking about your cues, your form. And because they're light, they allow you to screw up a little bit as you're getting over that morning or, that initial clumsiness that we all have when we first start our warm up in the gym, which is great because then by the time you hit real serious weights, you're going to be solid. And this approach is supported by every credible strength coach I know. Eric Helms calls it movement-specific preparation. Greg Nuckols says that if you're going to do one thing, make it specific to what you're training. Mark Ripito of Starting Strength says that you warm up with the movement you're about to train. That's the warm-up. So it kind of is consistent, but it doesn't preclude doing some of the other things we talked about ahead of time if needed. Speaking of systemic approaches and intentionality, this is what we teach inside Physique University. Again, just to accelerate the process for you, and in case you feel like you're still going to be guessing when you go to the gym, we've got a course that walks you through these. And of course, support and accountability, so you can post and say, hey, how do I warm up for my squat today? I'm doing this at this weight. Is this what I should be doing? Does this training program make sense? Take out the guesswork, give you frameworks. Just $27 a month, and I'm going to throw in a custom nutrition plan today if you join using the special link in the show notes. If you go to the public website landing page, you get the same price, but you won't get the free plan. So use my link in the show notes. All right, let's address some of the biggest mistakes that I see with warm-ups, because it's good to know what not to do as well. Because everybody's thinking here who's watching, okay, that sounds great, but there are things that I've done for my warm up. Is it okay to do those? Can I keep doing them? Are they helpful? And I think the biggest first mistake a lot of people have, and it comes from like the boot camp world, CrossFit F45 world, is the everything warm up, right? Where you spend a lot of time with foam rolling, with dynamic stretches, with mobility on every single limb, maybe yoga positions. You're, activating muscles that are firing just fine on their own, right? I got to activate my glute muscles. That's actually overloading yourself. You're doing too much before, you're loading too many background tasks before launching the main application, to go back to the computer analogy, right? So that's the first mistake. Mistake number 2 is the other extreme, the nothing warm up. Go straight from the locker room to loading up, maybe not the full working weight, but you go like halfway there. You do a warm up and then you load up the max on the bar, right? And that's, again, like trying to run a graphics intensive game right after you turn on your computer, right? You got to wait for everything to load up first. Mistake number 3 is, I'll say, the generic warm up. It's like, this is my warm up. I do it all the time, right? It's the same routine regardless of what you're training. And I would say that on a given day, based on what you're lifting, that the warm up's going to have to conform to get you ready for that. Yes, obviously the lift itself will by definition do that for you. But even when you're like warming up joints and stuff, if I'm not doing any upper body, I'm not going to spend as much time loosening up my shoulder if I literally don't have to use my shoulder in almost any lift for the day. Like, why waste the time? You don't really have to. Understanding that there are systemic, there are connections in the body that are systemic such that you sometimes do need to do that, but you've got to make a judgment call on that. So that's mistake number 3. Mistake number 4 is another big one. And that is, I'll say, confusing warm-ups with therapy, right? Like, in other words, like physical therapy. If you need 20 minutes of mobility work just to get into a squat position, I think that's more of a movement problem that has to be addressed separately. That's just my opinion. Even me, the guy with shoulder issues, it doesn't take me that long to get ready to use my shoulder in a workout, knowing that the lift I'm going to apply next is appropriate for what I'm dealing with. If it's not appropriate, then you may feel like, geez, I need to do all of this stuff first to get into that position. That is just my opinion. You may disagree. You may have a specific limitation. You're like, no, I really do 15 minutes. Need 15 minutes. I'm just sharing like general mistakes people have where there could be something else going on. And I alluded to this before, but the warm-up is a diagnostic tool. Okay. It is giving you real-time feedback about how your body, your system is functioning right now today. If your usual warm-up weights, like if you're going for that 405 deadlift, but the warm-up at 315 just feels really, really heavy for some reason, if your movement quality is off, right? Maybe you're just low on energy, you've been dieting, you didn't have enough sleep, the quality is off. If you have pain rather than the normal soreness or stiffness, right? Pain that wasn't there before, and you're like, what is this? Your body is talking to you right then and there. Like, that's a really good thing to listen, to listen to what's going on. I don't want you to make excuses, right? Because sometimes it feels a little heavy. And it's just because we're still warming up, and then we go after the working weight. And you know what? We get the working weight. It's fine, right? I'm not saying that. I'm saying that if something's off, something's just off, it might tell you something. And if you're in a dieting phase and you're using auto-regulated type programming, like rep ranges, that may be the thing that's telling you, this is what I need to hit today for the reps or for the weight or for the RP or RIR, right? I would say that's more of an advanced kind of thing, but the warm-up can help with that. And so one more thing comes to mind now that I think about it is the difference between soreness or delayed onset muscle soreness, DOMS, and pain. Because I think some people confuse the two. Yes, I want you to warm up if you have soreness. Try warming up and seeing if you're good to go. But if it's an acute pain, a sharp pain, something that doesn't improve as you warm up, pain that gets worse as you're loading into the warm up, pain that's sharper radiating, pain that creates like instability or you're compensating for it because it just feels so weak. Again, it's telling you something, and that is the point at which you're able to make a decision and do something about it. Okay. And some of us who've dealt with injuries and surgeries, we get really good at understanding whether our body's ready for something on a given day. And it may not be that you just don't train. my preference is you train around it or you train something different, right? If my back is like super sore and fatigued, even on a very light squat, I'm like, I remember in the past, this has caused me to like have a flare up, right? This is back in the day when I had a herniated disc. I don't now, so I don't get the pain, but it might tell me to, hey, maybe I shouldn't be doing this today because it's right on the cusp. I'm going to do maybe a couple accessory lifts, like a leg press, right? And an RDL or something to work similar muscle groups. So the warm up isn't just for prep. It's a really good diagnostic. And then when it reveals problems, you then have options, right? Reducing the intensity, working around with different exercises. Yes, maybe skipping training. I think that's the last resort. But the key here is to listen to the feedback that your body, your system provides and not just push through the warning signals. And that's not just me giving you a disclaimer. That's like really good practical advice. Now, if you're trying to customize your warm-up for different scenarios, I wanted to give you some options here because I know what your next question is like, well, what if I work out in the morning? Well, what if I do this? So morning sessions usually require a little more warm-up. That's just the fact of it. Your nervous system is sluggish, your joints are stiffer, your core temperature is lower, and you just may need to do a little bit extra, but not much, an extra couple minutes, right? An extra ramp-up set, something like that. And by the way, once you're warmed up and have done a lift, similar muscle groups that are being used for subsequent exercises, you may not need to warm up nearly as much. I almost always have one warm-up set, in subsequent lifts, unless it's super isolating, like a bicep curl. And even then, I still might do a warm-up set just to kind of prime things, and then I can really hit it hard for the working set, right? But an extra minute or two, if needed, is great. Go for it. If you are older, right? Over 30, over 40, over 50, it's not really an age thing so much as a personal recovery thing. You might benefit from more conservative jumps between the warm-up weights. Your tissues may need, more gradual loading to reach the readiness versus when you were in your 20s, right? So, the synovial fluid, the joints, the connective tissue. But again, don't use that as an excuse to go with a 20-minute warm-up. If you're later in the day, but you've been sitting all day or you're stressed to the brim, right, which many of us are from our work, your movement quality could be compromised from that. It's very interesting because I work out in the morning almost always, but occasionally I'll have to work out in the afternoon to move things around, and I just feel different. I actually don't feel as energized. I feel a little bit sluggish. My body's not used to it. So simply being in a different context or different gym, different day of the week, different time, you really just have to think about, should my warm-up be a little bit more intentional today, right? Should I target anything more intentionally, right? But keep it specific to what you've identified, not undoing everything and warming up for 30 minutes. If you have a max effort day, if you're going for a PR, right? The warm-up for that kind of lift is really critical. You want to be meticulous about the ramp up. You might want to take smaller jumps, but you don't want to over fatigue yourself for that single. But you might want to have a few singles near the target weight, but not too close to the target weight. It's like you're priming your nervous system to perform, but you're not overstressing it. Definitely a little bit of art as well as science, but it is one of the most common questions I see both in Physique University and with my coach, Andy Baker. People ask like, okay, how do I warm up to hit a PR? And my simplest explanation for that is you're going to warm up like any other lift. You might have an extra single or two. Don't make the last single too close to your last PR, right? Keep it like some distance away and then go for a small PR. Like don't do a single that's near your PR already because that might tax you out too much where you can't hit a PR. Give some room, take the time, the 3, the 4, the 5 minutes break, and then go for that single, that max at your, 5-pound PR or 10-pound or 2.5-pound PR, whatever it is, just to give yourself the best chance of actually getting it. Now, if you miss it, you miss it. But you gave yourself a chance. If you hit it and you feel great, then maybe that's a warm up for an even higher PR. That's just one more single in the way. And now you can take another 3, 4, or 5 minute break and then hit another PR, right? But if it feels tough or a grind, stay there. Like take the win, take the PR. That's the general philosophy for that. So I mentioned earlier at one point how our body is systemic, right? Things are connected. And I didn't want to forget to mention this, but when you're warming up, right? When you've got the movement patterns and you're priming your nervous system, there's a lot of communication going on. right? The muscles are an endocrine organ. That means hormones and signals involved, chemical signals. And so when you are ramping up those warm-ups, you're already starting to get one of the benefits that I've talked about before about lifting, which is muscles that release signaling molecules called myokines. And they help coordinate this response throughout your body. It is chemical messengers that are telling your body, get ready for what's about to come, because you're already kind of doing it, right? You're warming up, doing those patterns, but you're doing them light. So it's nice because what you can do is now prime your whole system to increase your blood flow, to increase the firing of your nervous system, to tell your brain, like, we're ready to go and get focused here and like dial in that motor control, that mind-muscle connection. So the warm-up prepares your muscles and joints and whole body communication to optimize your performance when you're ready to go at it. So that's also why movement-specific warm-ups are so much more effective than just a general warm-up and then just jumping into the lift, is to activate those neural pathways, right? And the signal cascades, all of that stuff we just talked about. All right, so bottom line here. I think I covered everything I wanted to regarding warm-ups. Basically, the warm-up is an important thing. It's not just increasing your temperature or getting loose, right? It's getting ready and getting feedback and diagnostic. It's not breaking a sweat. It's, booting up that whole system so that you can hit it hard with the lift and do it safely and avoid injury. And the warm-up should be individualized just like your training program. It should be just like your goals. It should be intelligent, like the approach you take with everything else in the gym. It is part of your training program. That's it. Whether it has to be pre-programmed for you, that's up to you and how much precision you want there. Some coaches will do that. Some people like to pre-log what their warm-up's going to look like. I don't think that's a bad idea when you're getting started, just to kind of take the thinking out of it when you get into the gym. And they're not a waste of time at all as long as you don't waste time, right? They're not a waste of time unless you waste time. Unless you waste time is what I think I said, right? It's intentional and it gives you valuable information about how you are functioning, and then you could pay attention to it and then adjust. That's it. Then you can go after PRs, then you can have healthy joints, then you can have safe lifting, then you're going to feel confident, then you're going to get the gains, and all because you took a few minutes to do this the right way. All right. If you enjoyed this episode, I wanted to mention episode 234, which was from a while ago. It's called Never Fall Off Again. Never fall off track again with your fitness or fat loss. It's about risk management principles, because I think warming up is a really solid risk management strategy. And that episode talked even more about risk management for everything that we do. So it's episode 234. I'll include the link in the show notes. Until next time, keep using your wits, lifting those weights, and remember, in lifting, proper initialization prevents system failures and malfunctions. This is Philip Pape, and you've been listening to Wits and Weights. I'll talk to you next time.